It began with the forging of the great podcast. Wait, where's that whispering in the background?
Maga ate bread for 3 stinking days.
I understand it.
Why can't we have some meat?
Was about their legs.
They don't need those. Dude, I feel like one of my weirdest things about watching these movies is we just accept that the orcs have like British accents.
Cockney accents for no reason, yeah.
I have no idea. Oh my god. You ready for this, man?
Oh, hell yeah.
Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? Critic and the Common Man here with another franchise episode. A little bit longer episode today, so sit back and relax. As you can see by the title and the thumbnail, of course, we're talking about a legendary movie franchise today. A big favorite of both Chris and mine. Probably one of the biggest movie franchises ever, right? I mean, it's up there. We, of course, are talking about The Lord of the Rings, not The Hobbit. We are not talking about The Hobbit today. We're going to maybe leave that for another episode. Maybe not even talk about that. Just The Lord of the Rings today. Dude, I'm kind of nervous to even talk about Lord of the Rings because it's so iconic and it's such a big thing that everybody loves so much. It's like you and I generally find at least a few negative things, even in pretty good movies, and I'm like scared to try and say anything negative about any of these Lord of the Rings movies.
How dare you?
I know, how dare you? But let's do it, man. I mean, let's go through all three of them. Let's talk about this franchise. You and I have seen these movies many, many times. I think you have probably seen them more than I have, I think it's safe to say.
I've seen
Which
them a
one
lot.
is your favorite? Just off the bat, which one do you like the most? And then let's start with the Fellowship of the Ring and just go through this franchise and talk about what we like, what we don't like, why it's so iconic, and give our thoughts on it.
My favorite, man, there's no way that you can beat Two Towers. It's so good.
Yeah, agreed.
What do you have there? Like a milkshake?
I wish, dude. That's literally just water. It's water in a great cup.
Okay. I thought it was like a vanilla
Like
milkshake from
cup,
the color.
like full of lemonade.
Exactly.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. That is a $2 Walmart cup full of pure H2O, baby.
I'm drinking
That's
blue
what I'm
milk
talking
from Star Wars.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm with you, man. It's got to be the Two Towers. For a plethora of reasons. The main one, pretty much just being the Battle of Helm's Deep. I feel like without Helm's Deep, it would probably be very similar to the Return of the King if it was just a different battle. Maybe that wasn't so phenomenal, but
Yeah.
dude, there's never been another movie to do like a war scene or any sort of battle scene and come anywhere near the Two Towers. Even the Return of the King, I would say, the battle for Minas Tirith, while it is incredible and it's definitely more grand than the Two Towers, the Battle for Helm's Deep, I still don't think there's any film that's ever been able to create that kind of suspense, that kind of intensity in a battle scene like that.
Absolutely not. No, they did such a good job of making setting up the underdog in that situation and making it feel desperate, and like that they're having old people and children fighting for them, Are you going to do this the whole time?
He's like, let me out. Let me out.
Yeah, God. Okay, we better not poop anywhere.
There's a tiny baby puppy that Chris is tasked with taking care of right now. Good luck, man. There he is. There he is. That's the little goblin right there, man. He's got those freaking teeth on him and everything. Those of you who have been following little Tenzin's progression will know that he has gotten significantly bigger. Oh my goodness. So you know a lot about the Lord of the Rings, obviously, Chris. You've seen these movies many, many times. How many
I've read
times
the
do you
books,
think you've
I've
seen? Yeah, how many times do you think you've seen these movies, like all in all?
I wouldn't be exaggerating if I said probably like 100 times.
Damn.
Yeah, man. I could quote them from beginning to end.
I realized as I was going through this and starting to put my thoughts into notes rather, and I was thinking, what is it about these movies that makes me love them so much? For me, it's the war. It's the war scenes in both the Two Towers and the Return of the King. There's not a ton of movies out there that can depict war on this grand of a level, especially when you pull in like the kind of fantasy aspect that these movies have, where it's not just war between people, it's war between humans and orcs and Nazgul and Feldbeast and trolls and wargs and all kind. You throw all these things in, sorcerers. It becomes just such a grand thing. And then I realized that's why the first Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, is probably my least favorite one. Not that it's a bad movie, but it's probably the one I've seen the least because it's the only one that lacks a big war scene.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Moria, but
yeah, you've got Moria, and you have the battle at the end there where Boromir is killed. But as far as like a grand, huge war that goes on, like a siege, that's the only one that basically lacks that aspect in those films. And I realized
with like catapults and
exactly, and them charging the wall and the rain of arrows down from the sky. That to me is, I think, why I still watch these movies. If I'm being totally honest, it's the story that they set up is incredible. The character development is insane. The acting is incredible. The scenery, visually, these movies are off the charts. But to me, it's the war scenes that they create that make these movies as good as they are. It's what makes them. It's what takes them from being like a really cool fantasy movie, and what turns them into, okay, these are probably one of my favorite or some of my favorite movies ever. They're just that exciting to watch every single time.
Dude, there's just so much that goes into the making of these movies that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the behind the scenes, but the amount of love that they poured into these movies and everything that they did in order to make them feel real, it's just amazing, and it's an achievement in film, and they're 100% worthy of every Academy Award that they won.
Oh, absolutely. And we talk about this almost every week. Almost every week when we get into this, we talk about the difference between practical effects and CGI. And a testament to definitely The Fellowship of the Ring, but I think the biggest testament to The Two Towers is that they were able to create something so grand and so big and retain the amount of practical effects that they had. Now, I know some things were CGI'd in that movie, of course, but the fact that they created these orcs and they created these characters and a lot of the stunt work and everything was done, in real life, the level of practical effects that they have in these are probably one of the main things, especially about The Two Towers, to me, that puts it off the charts. Because The Fellowship of the Ring is mostly practical effects, but it's not like they have any huge war scenes or anything like that. And then The Return of the King, again, incredible movie, and it's pretty much a mix. Now, I love Return of the King almost as much as I love The Two Towers, but I think there's a lot of things, but I think there is a little bit of a diminished sense of that practical effect. Not a lot, but a little bit of that diminished sense of practical effect in The Return of the King. Now, the reason I don't like The Return of the King as much as The Two Towers is not because of that. There's other things that I have in my notes that we'll get to, but I will say that, like you were saying, as far as what goes into making these movies, I can only imagine that the production must have been like unprecedented. It must have been insane.
For which one? For Return of the King?
Any of them. For any of
absolutely.
them. I mean, for Return of the King and The Two Towers, but honestly, for any of them. I think The Fellowship of the Ring probably seemed the most feasible. But other than that, I mean, they're insane. They're insane what went into these.
I mean, even with Fellowship being the most feasible, dude, you're talking about giant flaming demon monsters, mines.
Didn't they? Yeah, that's true. Didn't they also like actually create the Shire? Like, isn't that a place now you can go and visit in New Zealand?
They built it for the Lord of the Rings movies, and then I believe they took it down. Because they had an agreement with New Zealand, with like the government of New Zealand, that they could build wherever they wanted as long as they returned it, to, like basically as long as when they left it looked untouched.
Right.
So all the trees that they took had to be replanted in the same spot. So they had to take photographs.
Jeez.
But then when they did The Hobbit,
it's like one of those environmental wonderlands. Like, dude, if you go to Antarctica, like I read a story about a guy who went to Antarctica. And he basically did a trek across the whole thing, and he had to shit into a bag and then pack the shit and take it with him because you can't leave any like biological trace behind.
Wow.
And like if you want to go to the Galapagos Island on like an adventure trek permit thing, like you can't eat any food that has seeds in it for like 3 weeks leading up to it because they're scared you're gonna poop and like a seed will propagate and like screw up the whole like ecological system over there. I swear, dude, you can look this
Wow.
up. That is a real thing.
No, I
So I can
100%
imagine
believe that.
throwing that aspect of everything into the production must have been. I don't know how they did it. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of all that. It must have been a huge team, but that's unbelievable what they were able to
Yeah. Oh,
accomplish. in
dude.
these
I mean, they had
movies.
hundreds of people working on these movies. But
They
yeah,
must
so
have.
they built the Shire and then they removed it, and then when they did the Hobbit, they built it again, and then I think they left it. I think the New Zealand government, because of the success and obviously for tourism purposes,
Yeah, they
I think
knew
it's
it'd be
still
a big
there.
tourist attraction. Yep, everybody wants to go bang their heads
Yeah.
on the chandelier
Heck yeah.
in the Shire. So, do you know, were the books as big of a phenomenon as the movies were?
Absolutely, man.
Really?
Yeah, when he published The Hobbit, it kind of blew up. Like, he was in his 60s. I think he was 63 when it got published. And he wrote it when he was in his 20s. So
And this was a long time ago, right?
Uh,
Didn't he write these
19
books during?
the books were published in the late 60s or early 70s.
Man,
I think I'm pretty sure that's correct. And then, but they were written like in World War One. Like, well, he put the world together in like World War One, like in the trenches. He started coming up with ideas and stuff, and then he got the book published, The Hobbit, and then people fell in love with it, and they begged him to make more. And so he said, "Well, I have all these other notes. I can just do that." And so he wrote The Lord of the Rings. But like where The Hobbit was for children, The Lord of the Rings was like, this is for me, kind of a thing. So Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings to kind of have his world on paper. It wasn't really for
so why
anyone.
do you think? I got you. Why do you think they decided to go with the Lord of the Rings series first and not the Hobbit?
I think because it's darker, there was more there. Because The Hobbit, like I said, it was for kids, and so I think there was like a certain fan base. But with The Lord of the Rings, The Lord of the Rings is what blew it up to be like a cultural phenomenon. Because
Gotcha.
Britain didn't have a story for itself, like it didn't have a fantasy world that was British. And so Tolkien went out of his way and he said, I'm going to make a world that is for Britain. And he created The Lord of the Rings. And absolutely, man, people loved it because of the fantasy aspects and the world building. He did all the languages.
Yeah, it was funny too because you and I talked about this a little bit of the podcast. We, as you guys know, if you follow this podcast, Chris and I play Dungeons and Dragons together. Chris is, our group's DM. And that's a recent thing for me to pick up Dungeons and Dragons. So prior to playing D&D, I didn't really pick up on these references that were in the Lord of the Rings. But this fantasy world that's kind of created. So I'm assuming D&D took a lot from the Lord of the Rings franchise or vice versa.
No, Lord of the Rings came out first.
Right.
Everything,
So,
and Lord of the Rings spurred pretty much all of that stuff.
So there wasn't like goblins and orcs and like those weren't really in fantasy tales that much prior to Lord of the Rings, or he kind of took all of that in and made a world out of those things.
There was a lot of folklore out there about this kind of stuff, but there wasn't, as far as I know, no real story that had that kind of stuff. Maybe the Arthurian legends, back in the day.
Yeah.
King Arthur and all that stuff where they were fighting, like nymphs and, stories
Minotaur
from then.
and all
Yeah,
that
exactly.
stuff.
Stuff like that, Greek mythology, things like that. But
Right, dragons and things. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just, it's insane that I wonder too. I wondered how the reception was to the first Lord of the Rings. And I should have looked at box office numbers before we did this. I didn't even think about this until right now. But the movie, I wondered, because these books were there, they existed, and then, okay, we're going to make a movie franchise on these now. So they come out and they put out The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, again, The Fellowship of the Ring is probably my least favorite personally. But a lot of people that I talk to about Lord of the Rings, that's one of their, if not their favorite movies, which always surprises me.
The Fellowship?
The Fellowship. I know a
Really?
few people that actually say they like The Fellowship the most, and I think it's because it sets up so much of the lore and it's so like story and character driven, and that's perfectly fine. I get it. I just to me, I watched The Fellowship of the Ring, and it's almost like, and here we go, because I know people get pissed off when you say anything negative about these franchises, but to me, I watched The Fellowship of the Ring, and it's almost like I'm only watching it so that I can get through and start watching The Two Towers and The Return of the King. Now, I'm not saying I dislike The Fellowship of the Ring as a movie. I just think if you look at all three of them, The Two Towers and The Return of the King, to me, are a little bit more exciting and a little bit less theatrical. They're a little darker, but that's also because they have the big war scenes
Right.
in them, and that's really
There's
what I
more
like.
of what feels like a climax in them.
Yeah, I think so. Now, the Balrog, of course, is like a big moment in the first one and going through the mines. But I think it's something about those war scenes that are in the other two movies that really push them over the top for me.
I think the Fellowship of the Ring very much feels like the part one of a three-part story.
Yeah.
And so I think it makes sense, like it's act one of this overarching story that, you just you want to watch more of it. And so I think it does what it needs to do, which is create the intrigue and establish the world and establish the characters and the heroes and stuff, and then leaves you wanting more. And I think that's why the other two are so much better. But I actually really like the Fellowship of the Ring. I really like
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people do. I just, again, and I completely agree with everything you just said, 100%. It serves its purpose perfectly as the setting up the characters, setting up the fellowship, literally the fellowship of people that are going to be going on this mission, kind of giving you the lore, that lays out the foundation for what this story becomes. I just wondered what the reception to the Fellowship of the Ring was like after it was out in theaters. If people were, because if you didn't know, if you'd never already seen The Two Towers or The Return of the King, and you just saw the Fellowship of the Ring, how would you, what would be your perspective on the Lord of the Rings franchise at that point? Like, if that was the only movie that existed, would the Lord of the Rings at that point be your favorite movie ever?
Oh, I
if
see
it
what
was
you're
just
saying.
the
Yeah,
Fellowship of the Ring at that point. Like, I don't think it was, to me, it would not surprise me if it was not until after The Two Towers that the Lord of the Rings, like the movies, became massive.
Well, I mean, even when the Fellowship of the Ring came out, I remember seeing commercials and I remember the MTV Movie Awards. They did a whole spoof on it. It was pretty big.
So it was a blockbuster for sure. It was a
Yeah,
big,
man.
it was a big
It
event.
won like 12 Academy Awards or something. Like it was insane. Like
Wow.
the reception for it was ridiculous.
There you go. Yeah, I wish I had looked up those box office numbers, and I guess I could right now. I can kind of check. But if you're saying all that, I would imagine then that it was a huge success. And then The Two Towers and the Return of the King speak for themselves. I don't see how anybody could go, especially if you like The Fellowship of the Ring, I don't see how anybody could go watch either of those two movies and not be blown away. Those are insanely good movies. What is it about this franchise overall that you think makes it so damn good?
Honestly, man, there is something about the love that was put into these movies. There's something about the music behind it, the visuals, the set building, the little details in everything that you don't even see. From like the filigree on their cloaks to the details on the swords, the buildings, things like that you don't really notice as a viewer. That makes the world feel real, and it makes it feel like it feels like history rather than fantasy. And I think there's something about it that makes it relatable to everybody. It's just an achievement in film, and I think everybody could kind of feel that and see that.
Yeah, that's so true, man. That's so true. There's so much attention to detail, and the visuals for me are what stand out as being like the big thing. When you watch these movies, it's insane, again, what they were able to create and bring to life on the screen. Like, everything looks real. It all looks real throughout these movies. But it's really fun. I mean, let's jump into it. We'll start out with the Fellowship of the Ring. Obviously, the first of the three in this big franchise. Again, we're not really talking about The Hobbit here because it just feels so disconnected and it feels like such a different thing. But let's jump into it with the Fellowship. What do you think of the Fellowship of the Ring? Obviously, we've both already kind of stated it's not necessarily our favorite one, but still a very good movie. What do you really like about it? What do you dislike about it?
I like that the Fellowship kind of builds this world. It throws you into the story so quickly with that intro scene. And dude, that intro is one of the most badass battle sequences I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And when you're a nerd that is into that kind of stuff like me, I remember watching that and my mouth just dropped and I was like, oh my God, I'm in for a ride with this movie. And I
Yeah.
remember just seeing that, and then you see this dark story kind of told, and then it just kind of dips and you get this beautiful first hour of just like the Shire and hobbits and like let's go drink and have a party, and and then very very slowly it starts to build tension and you start to realize there's something wrong, and then all of a sudden like this is a very powerful item, we have to get out of here, and then they're on the run for the rest of the movie, and it just sets up such a good premise for like these heroes.
Yeah. And I think everybody, not to jump ahead too much here, but I think everybody really settles into their characters in the Two Towers. Like, I think if you look at all the characters and like how they act, like the actors, I will say, like really settle into their characters in the Two Towers. But I agree with you that the Fellowship of the Ring sets them up perfectly for who they are. The Fellowship of the Ring to me seems like the most theatrical of the three. Like, it kind of seems like the most I don't know if over the top is the right word. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's like it seems the most like the characters are kind of like really over the top in kind of how they're acting and how they're portraying their characters, and some of the dialogue and like with Gandalf and stuff in the beginning, it can seem a little bit goofy. But even like the lighting and stuff, like it seems the most lighthearted, I think, of the three of them.
Yeah.
Probably because for most of the movie it is. But I think because it feels the most lighthearted, to me it comes off as the most theatrical, and by that I just mean like you can tell you can almost tell they're acting a little bit more in the first one than I think you can in any of the other ones.
Yeah.
Not really to a fault. I just think it's there. I think it's present, like in the difference between the Fellowship, the Two Towers, and then the Return of the King. If you look at that one, it's brighter. It's a little happier for the most part,
Absolutely.
until obviously the end when the story kind of takes that downward spiral. The characters, even the Nazgul and stuff, like, and as they're lighting them on fire, and it just seems like kind of the most over the top. And then you get into the next two, and they sort of settle into these just like really dark, intense kind of fantasy adventure movies. But they, like you said, they kind of have to do that. I'm sure the budget for the first one was probably smaller than the other two. And then also, there's not a big war scene in the first one. There,
The thing to remember, all the movies were shot back to back, so the budget was the budget.
Really?
Yeah. The movies were shot like nonstop. They were filming 1, 2, and 3 all at once.
They didn't pause at all between any of those movies?
From 1999 until 2004.
Dude, Jesus.
Yeah. The first set that was built was Rivendell in the middle of the forest. They were carving the trees and basically setting up this world for where the elves were going to be, and they built. That was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was 1999 when they first did it.
Dude, oh my God! And they didn't stop.
No, that's so like these people that they found had to like basically put their lives on hold. Like Sean Astin like missed. He didn't miss, but like because their families would come visit and stuff. But like he wasn't there for like the formative years of his daughter's life. Like,
Holy crap!
Because she was like a newborn, I think at the time she was like 2 or 3 or something like that, and he was filming the Lord of the Rings, and yeah, a lot of the actors had to kind of put their life on hold, and they became their own family during the set.
Wow.
So like the money that they were given was the money. And of course, they kept getting more and more because at first it wasn't New Line Cinema that was taking them on. They were supposed to do one movie. And then New Line Cinema said, we'll give you enough for 2 movies. And then they started to show them what they could do. And eventually New Line said, okay, fine, make your 3 movies. And
make your third.
And Peter Jackson made all 3 back to back. And he said, I'll never do it again. And then he made The Hobbit.
Wow. See, and that blows me away because I feel like there's a big difference in kind of the tone of these movies, specifically between 1 and then 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Like if you watch The Fellowship of the Ring, that does not even seem like, I don't know. I mean, now that I think about it, that might be a little excessive to say it's not on the same level as The Two Towers or Return of the King. But it just seems like the tone of those movies really shifts.
Absolutely,
It gets
it
a
does.
lot darker and a lot more intense. So it surprises me that they would just go back to back and still maintain that shift.
Yeah, and I think that the shift was done on purpose. I think that it's meant to show you that like the beautiful world that we saw at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring has ended, and like that is not the world that we're entering into the going forward now.
Right. Yeah, now like Saruman's becoming more powerful, and Sauron is starting to like become more desperate to do these things. Like he doesn't want to see like, you know, men unite again. This movie has some of the most iconic scenes in it. I guess this franchise has some of the most iconic scenes in it ever. Like, dude, you look at some of the stuff that happens. Like half of them, Legolas is doing. Like between him, like somehow swinging up onto that horse. Like, dude, you remember that scene where like they're fighting the wargs in the two towers, and Legolas like grabs the horse and then somehow ends up like on the opposite side of it,
and,
like
and his arm is completely fine and not broken. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh my god, those get me so worked up, dude. Like I'm ready to fight. Like I pretty much watch those movies and I like start whittling a bow out of like the trees in my backyard. Yeah. Like those movies are insane.
I swing my swords and then I go outside and I look for an orc.
Yeah. I start cutting water bottles in my backyard and putting it up on YouTube. I go to Walmart and start looking for an orc to take out. I've been kicked out of a lot of Walmarts, man.
He has, actually. You can look that up.
You can look that up. Wanted. Local man pretends to be Aragorn and gets kicked out of a lot of Walmart. To me, it seems like there's almost more of a sense of magic in the Fellowship of the Ring than there is in the other two movies. And by magic, I just mean like Gandalf specifically in the Fellowship of the Ring. It seems like he's a little bit more, he seems like it's a little bit more of like a stereotypical wizard in that movie. Like he's able to kind of like cast little, you know, do little spells here and there. And he seems he seems really wise throughout all of the movies, to be honest. His wisdom never really is in question or in check, but he seems like he just, as far as a wizard goes and his like magical ability, I would say that Gandalf seems the most kind of magic in the first one, and then the actual magic that you see him do definitely in the Two Towers is not there a lot. He kind of comes back in the Return of the King where he's like shining his light on the Nazgul and the Fell Beast, but it doesn't seem like you see a ton of him doing like stereotypical wizard magic where he's like shooting lightning bolts or like fireballs or anything like that. It's much more like subtle.
Bridgegar and Vizia.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's definitely toned down in the second one. I don't know, man. I don't know about you, but like, I think like once Gandalf the White comes in, he's such a dick. Like,
he's definitely pretty pretentious, but I mean, he's supposed to have lived, or he's supposed to have at least like mentally been alive for like eons at that point, right?
Well, he's technically a spirit. Like even when he was Gandalf the Grey, he's technically like, for lack of a better word, an angel. That was kind of sent down as like a guardian of Earth. He's one of like all of the wizards are spirits that were guardians of Earth, and Saruman happens to be one.
That kind of went over my head. I missed that a little bit.
That's in the books. I don't think it's talked about much. They call him Ishtari a couple times in the movies, but you don't really know what that is unless you've read the books. But
it is funny how the lore is so heavy in this. Like, I'm telling you, this is one thing that I will say. If you haven't done this already, even if you think you've got a pretty good grasp on Lord of the Rings, especially if you're somebody like me who's never read the books, you just watch the movies, watch the movies with the subtitles on. Because if you watch those movies with the subtitles on, dude, you'll pick up on all kinds of stuff where you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that's what he said. Or like, I thought he was saying something else. And you start like hearing and picking up on words that mean things like that it's just the lore comes out in the vocabulary that a lot of them use.
It helps you kind of start to connect the dots.
Yes, it does. But going back to what we were saying, like in the first one, for example, even like the elven girl, who's Aragorn's like wife?
Arwen.
Who's that? Arwen, yeah, Arwen. Even Arwen, like, dude, she like makes the river flow down, and like the horse. Like, you don't really see that kind of like magic use in the other two movies.
Yeah, no, it's true. I actually can't think of a scene where there was like some sort of magic use. Frodo uses
not like that.
Yeah, he uses the spell to like turn the light on his
Right, and the thing, and that's like, but like that's what I think I mean when I say the first one seems the most theatrical, because like a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that will happen where it just seemed like, and like the fireworks, where the big dragon firework will come down. It's almost like the first movie was made by one person and then the other two were made by like a different person, like just in the slightest bit. But
So I think, and I might just be reaching here to try and defend the movies, but I think for two reasons. One, the first movie is setting up a lighter world, a world before the darkness.
yeah.
And two, I think that as the movies go on, the source of magic, especially for like elf magic, is dimming, which is why you see Arwen is dying basically towards the end of the movies.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and
I didn't even think about that.
yeah, and I think so that like a lot of the source of magic that isn't dark magic is kind of like fading from the world, and I think that is kind of it. I think that the reason the movies do that is to set up that Sauron is growing more and more powerful, and his shadow is kind of looming. You even see scenes where the shadow kind of grows over the map of Middle Earth and stuff. Like his force is growing, his presence is growing, and so all of that stuff that they could do before is kind of losing its abilities. That's just me putting that out there. I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's reads the books, multiple times a year and would be able to say that.
I hope so. Listen, hey, look, if you're somebody who's like got a really good grasp on the Lord of the Rings, by all means, comment down below. We're not experts, you know what I mean? Chris, you obviously are much more so than I. So I do have a couple lore questions for you that I had a couple like that were a little bit confusing to me even when I was watching it through this time. And for the record, let me just state, I'll come clean about this. This was probably my third time watching The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, I've seen the Two Towers, and yeah, right. I've seen the Two Towers and the Return of the King probably 5, maybe 6 times each at this point. I've seen those a lot because, again, this will be like the 10th time of me saying this in this podcast already. I just think those are a little more interesting to me with the war scenes. They're a little more exciting. I find myself watching the Two Towers especially a lot. I don't really find myself going back to watch The Fellowship of the Ring all that much. But I realized when I was going through it this time under a little bit more careful eye, because I knew we'd be talking about it on the podcast, there are some things about the lore that I had questions about. So Aragorn is Isildur's heir, but obviously he's not like his direct heir in any way, right? Like, didn't they say like 2,000 years had passed between like that battle and then like the time period now?
Yes.
So
Yeah, I was there, Gandalf, 2,500 years ago.
Right. So Aragorn is just like way far down the line. He, like Isildur would have been his like great whatever.
Yeah,
To whatever,
he's
notion.
a descendant in the sense that he comes from that line of men, because Isildur is a Númenórean, and so he comes from basically the island of Atlantis out in the ocean. And the Númenóreans were just people who were like, they were kind of angry at elves, because elves and men were the only two creations of like the creator, the god that created Earth.
Right.
And elves and men were the two creations of his. Elves came first, and elves were kind of tasked with protecting the Earth until humans came and woke up. That's just how it's described in the Silmarillion, that it's the waking of the elves and the waking of whatever that means. I don't know. In my mind, I just see them popping up out of the ground like, hey, we're here.
Yeah. What?
But the humans basically resented elves for living forever, and elves resented humans for being able to die. Because they got like humans wanted the power of not being able to die, because when an elf dies, their spirit goes to the island of the gods, and it's reborn into a new elf body, and it's brought to Middle Earth, and they go have a new life. It's reincarnation.
So the elves are immortal in the sense that they'll never die of old age, but they can be killed.
They can be killed,
that's what you were saying.
but they're brought back. Their body is
Right.
reborn.
So their like elven spirit is like
Recycled.
reincarnated into
Yeah.
another elf.
basically.
Oh, fuck. Dude, that's deep.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. And humans wanted that. They liked the power and the aspect that, like, hey, I don't ever have to face my mortality. But elves liked that humans
Elves
could
wanted to move on. At some
exactly, because humans then get to go live with the gods, and they didn't like that, and so there was some competition there. So as like to kind of settle that dispute a little bit, the gods gave a specific line of humans, the Númenóreans, they gave them longer lifespans. And the Númenóreans kind of fell trapped to Sauron, Sauron disguised himself as an angel and went to their island and kind of started spreading fake propaganda about the gods, saying, hey, they're not actually that powerful. They don't even like you guys. They just started like putting all of these thoughts into their heads. And a lot of the Numenorians started saying, yeah, like, fuck those guys. And once the gods found out about that, they sunk the entire island. They said, well, fuck you guys. So they sunk the island, but only the ones who hadn't fallen to that propaganda were allowed to leave. They kind of got like a warning. And that line went to Middle Earth, and that was Isildur and his people, who they then started Gondor and that country.
And is this all explained in the books?
Yeah, not in the... I don't remember it being in like the Return of the King or anything like that. But I have a book called The Silmarillion, which is basically Tolkien's notes. It's a series of short stories, almost like a Bible of the Lord of the Rings. It basically it tells.
I was gonna say, dude, I don't remember hearing any of that.
Yeah, it tells the creation story.
About Atlantis.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's like really like the lore of all of this.
Yeah, the Silmarillion basically touches on the first, second, and third, or the first and second age, because the Lord of the Rings takes place during the third age of Middle Earth.
Okay.
And so the Silmarillion talks about like what happened before, and then the first age and the second age, and the war before that, and the guy who Sauron originally looked up to, because Sauron was a lieutenant to like an original bad guy named Melkor. And so like if you think that Sauron was bad, Melkor was a fucking badass. Like, which there's this line in the Silmarillion that I thought was really cool, and like it's describing Sauron for the first time, and like, you know, when you're reading it and you know about the Lord of the Rings, you're like fangirling because you're like, oh, that's Sauron, that's badass.
Right.
And it's describing it, and it's just one little line, and it says, Sauron would rise like a shadow of Morgoth, and like that's just the craziest like description for him.
That is bad. So was Sauron a man? Was he like a human? And then
Sauron was in the same sense that...
Oh, wait. They do explain that in the movie. Sauron was the like king guy that got his hand cut off with the ring on it, right? Wasn't that Sauron?
That was, but he wasn't like a king or anything. He was a spirit that got tainted by Morgoth. Okay. Or Melkor. It's the same person.
Okay. And
Melkor is the god.
One. So was Sauron the one that created the rings?
Yes.
Gotcha. And he basically deceived them, and he created the ring of power to rule them all.
So he didn't create the other rings. He created the one ring. The other rings were kind of gifts to try and give the different races like the power to basically be able to govern their own people.
Gotcha.
They gave them like unnatural abilities, you know, like wisdom, things like that. Each of the rings has a different ability. Like Galadriel has the ring of fire, if I remember. I think it's Nenya.
Nenya business.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. Yeah.
Too easy.
But no, Sauron was an angel that got corrupted by Melkor, because there's 12 gods, and one of the gods was this evil god, and he waged war on all the other ones, and that's what the first and second age was about, was like this war of the gods that took place, and then he was eventually kind of cast out and tossed into an abyss, and Sauron rose as like his second in command and took over when his boss was gone.
Gotcha. Another question I had also was, are Saruman and Gandalf the only two wizards in this whole world?
No, there's 7 or 9. I think it's 9. I don't remember, but there's multiple wizards.
And the other ones just
because Radagast.
The other ones just aren't really involved in this story.
Yeah, they're all kind of in their own. They're doing their own thing, kind of, because their whole job is to protect Middle Earth, and Saruman kind of gives into his fear of Sauron, and it's also kind of hinted because that Palantir, the thing that he uses to kind of see, and even in the Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf sees it, he's like, dude, what are you doing? And he pulls that, like, the little handkerchief out of nowhere, like he just waves his hand and it pops up, and he covers it, and he says, we don't know who else is watching. Mm-hmm. And then he touches it, and he gets a flash of the eye.
Right.
Because right there it's hinted that Saruman probably found it, started using it because as a wizard he's curious.
Right.
And was tainted by Sauron. And over time, Sauron kind of put his like tendrils into his mind. And so it's probably Sauron that corrupted Saruman. Just through the use of the Palantir without him even knowing.
Gotcha.
Until eventually Sauron was like, "Hey, it's me. Wanna work with me? I'm pretty cool."
Right. Want to take over Middle Earth, and then
Just like that.
So the last question I had that kind of comes up as part of the Fellowship is like, how much of this world, this Lord of the Rings world, are these movies taking place over? Like Rohan, Gondor, Mordor. Like, how much of their actual world is this? Is it just like, would this basically be like, for example, like this would be like a piece of land the size of America in a bigger world, or would this be like the entire landmass of the whole world that they're on?
No, because the Silmarillion takes place to the north, if I remember correctly. So there's a whole other landmass. Like there's more to this landmass to the north, and there's a bunch of land to the south that we don't really ever see.
Okay.
And
they kind of mention, like, when they get the crazy dudes with the elephants. Like, they kind of mention, they kind of mention that, like, they're from another place, and then, pirates from the east or wherever they're, like, they kind of do mention that there's more to this world, and then where the elves are trying to go. Like, it's certainly talked about in the movies that.
Yeah, and see, the elves are trying to go to the island of the gods.
Gotcha.
That in all these movies, they're trying to head west to Valinor, where the gods live.
Gotcha, dude. That's crazy as hell. But yeah, I mean, all that I just kind of was spawned out of the idea that, like, it seems like in the first movie, the Fellowship of the Ring seems to be the most kind of magical. But that makes sense when you start looking into the actual lore of it, that the source of a lot of the magic was dying and diminishing.
Because I'm pretty sure it's a star that gives them their magic to the elves, the Eden Star.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. It's insane, man. I mean, this... Again, as somebody who didn't read the books and just comes into these movies, I definitely love these movies, but I love them for what you're seeing on screen. And for what it's worth, the Fellowship of the Ring does a really good job setting that up. But I don't think there's any way, and you get this a lot with most sci-fi, movies that are adaptations of books. And I think one movie that's coming up that we're definitely going to see this in is Dune, because anybody who's ever read Dune can tell you that is a dense, dense book, and there is a lot of...
You have it next to you right there, right?
Yeah, I need to send it to you, man, or honestly, I'll just get you a copy on Amazon and have it shipped over to you, because I want you to read it before the movie comes out. It's so expensive. Yeah, but it's a great book, and it'll probably... The price will jump up now that a movie's coming out. But I just say that to mean, like, just like in Dune, I'm sure it'll be the same thing. Like, there's no way the Fellowship of the Ring could possibly give you all of that information and try to fit it into a 2.5, even 3-hour movie. It's just too much.
That's why the movies are so long.
Right, because they're fitting so much lore.
Tolkien was approached back in the day to make a movie about the Lord of the Rings. Well, actually, he was approached by the Beatles. The Beatles were supposed to do a movie.
What?
Lord of the Rings, and they were... Yeah, it's bizarre. They were trying to do some acting.
The Beatles were trying to produce a Lord of the Rings movie?
Not just produce, they were trying to be the characters. Like, one of the Beatles was supposed to be Gandalf, and Tolkien just, like, looked at them and was like, absolutely not.
Dude, thank God they didn't let that happen, man. Could you imagine how bad that would be if they decided to make Lord of the Rings, but the whole thing was the Beatles? This is the Return of the King.
I don't know if there was, like, animosity there or something. Like, maybe he thought they were, like, kind of buffoons, or I don't know. But he said that they were not allowed to. And then he was approached before, or maybe later, to make a movie as well, and he basically sold the film rights. Eventually, he just sold the film rights for free. He didn't believe that anybody could make a successful movie, because he said there's too much content, there's too much in this world for somebody to make a movie well, and so he just gave the film rights away, which is why you have a cartoon from the 70s. Which a lot of the movies were... There's, like, shots that were kind of inspired by the cartoon and stuff.
I didn't even know there was a cartoon.
But, yeah, man, and Miranda lives by it, and I just... It's one of those, like, old cartoons, like the Last Unicorn or something like that. I can't stand that like, style of art. It's creepy to me. So, yeah, there were a lot of films that were attempted to be made, and Tolkien just didn't think it would ever be possible, and we can see why. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was in the books that got taken out.
There's a lot of depth. How is it, do you think that... how do you think the Lord of the Rings franchise was able to kind of bridge the gap between, like, the nerds, quote unquote, who were like really into like the lore, and then becoming such a just a cultural thing where I'm not going to say everybody loves it, because there's obviously still people who think the Lord of the Rings is a little much and like don't really get into it. But for the most part, a lot of people can agree that the Lord of the Rings is just a phenomenal series. Like, how did it bridge that gap with that much lore behind it?
I think, again, it's just the realism to it, the level of detail in the movies. And on top of that, that they also included some... They made some slight changes by like making Frodo younger, because like in the books he's like in his 60s.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, but I don't know if like hobbits age differently. So, but like when Gandalf leaves,
I don't like thinking of Frodo as like an old person.
Yeah,
like, I like the idea of him being younger.
Yeah, because it kind of adds like you like him more because you know he has so much ahead of him, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and he's like more innocent, kind of, and yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you what, dude. The Lord of the Rings is definitely for everybody, and give credit where credit's due. I'm fairly sure that the Lord of the Rings put me through puberty. Like I remember when I was like hanging out with some people, and I remember I was young enough at the time to think that like, oh, Lord of the Rings is for boys, like only boys like Lord of the Rings. And I remember the first time a girl told me that she was like really into the Lord of the Rings.
You instantly grew chest hair.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this feels different. Oh, my body is changing. And that was it, dude. Like, I'm fairly certain that hearing a woman tell me...
What's happening to me?
I'm fairly certain that hearing a girl tell me that she liked Lord of the Rings immediately jump-started me into puberty, dude. Yep. I give full credit to the Lord of the Rings for me entering puberty. So, congratulations, Lord of the Rings. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. But that was a big moment in my life, dude. Like, figuring out that things like that were for everybody. And, you know, I'm kind of joking around. I'm not, but I'm kind of joking around with what I was saying. But also, it is interesting how something this, you know, traditionally nerdy can become so freaking popular just amongst everybody. Yeah. It's just such a big thing.
Yeah. What would you say was your favorite part, like, you know, from the movies? Because, like, for me, dude, Boromir's death scene is, like, heartbreaking.
From the first one specifically,
yeah,
like favorite part from the first one specifically, it's got to be the "You shall not pass."
Really?
I mean, that's not like creative, and I know that's kind of the stereotypical, but dude, that still gets me hyped up now, even now watching that.
Yeah, it's a pretty badass scene.
Shall not pass.
Gandalf, is that you?
Yeah, that was me.
I remember watching that scene.
Onto my face.
Yeah, I remember watching that scene. The first time I saw the Fellowship of the Ring, I had no idea it was a trilogy.
Really?
Yeah, I had no idea because somebody lent it to me, like a friend from because I was in junior high. Somebody lent it to me, and they were like, "Dude, just watch this. It's really cool. Like, I think you'll like it." And so I ended up watching it, and I was like, "Oh, like I remember putting it in, thinking like, oh, what is this about? Some stupid magic ring or whatever? Oh, it's so dumb." And then again, the first 5 minutes, I was like, "Whoa, I had this way wrong." And then by the end of the movie, I just remember when Gandalf died, I was like, oh my God, they just lost the most important person in their party. Like, holy shit, this is crazy. And then at the end, when Frodo and Sam are kind of like looking at the mountains, he's like, I'm glad you're with me, Sam. And then it ends. I was like, what? Where's
like,
the rest of the story?
Hell?
I was like, what is this? And then I remember Googling it.
Let me look. Do you know how much time before I Google it, and I have it right here, but do you know how much time passed between the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers?
I think it was a year or two.
What the fuck? Dude, these movies came out dude, okay, this is blowing my mind. The Fellowship of the Ring came out in 2001, the Two Towers was in 2002,
yeah.
And the Return of the King was in 2003. You're not kidding.
Yeah, they came out...
fucking put these movies out back to back to back.
I'm pretty sure it was like Christmas Eve of each of those years.
Oh, this is blowing my mind,
yeah.
Dude. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
I thought there was like years in between these.
No, they had very
like,
strict deadlines that they almost missed.
How can the Return of the King feel so much improved than the Fellowship of the Ring? How is that possible?
I think there was just a lot of money that was like their budget was just they had to divvy it out, you know, because the movies were so massive. So I think a lot of the budget went to doing other things.
Oh, dude, this is like really messing me up. This is like really messing me up. So they came out 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
They came out. Dude, I could have sworn that The Return of the King was at least 6 or 7 years after The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, no.
When you watch those movies, it feels like there was like some big leap in technology between the first one and the third one, dude.
Why?
It
Like,
doesn't
where do
even-
you see that? That's funny that you say that.
Just like in the battles, like there's no way that I feel like the Fellowship of the Ring with like with how they were doing things and like how that was produced. I don't feel like that could have made a battle for Minas Tirith or like a battle for Helm's
it's
Deep. Like
funny
it just
'cause-
feels like tonally like it's such a different thing.
Like the scene in Moria when they're like running down the steps and they're being shot at by the goblins and stuff. That's all CG. There's no actors in that.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
So like
dude.
they're
This is like really messing me up.
like basically all of Moria
man.
is CG. Like there is not a single actor in basically the wide shots of Moria because they couldn't like had they. So all the Legolas that you see like running down the steps and all that, that's fake. There's nobody in that. They took photos of the actors and kind of put them on the models.
Jesus, and I consider myself a fan of Lord of the Rings, dude. Look at me, I'm a fucking rookie. I'm a noob. I had no idea. Seriously, I would have believed if someone had told me that the Two Towers and the Return of the King came out back to back. But when I watch the Fellowship of the Ring, it feels so like tonally, it feels so different. It feels so much more lighthearted.
It is definitely different. I mean, the second one starts really like the color palette's completely different.
Exactly.
But again, I think they did that. I think they did that on purpose to kind of show you a shift in the story. That like, okay, we're done with the lighthearted world that we've set up. Like, there's less green, and I think also it depends on where they are on the map, because like Rivendell looks beautiful. The Shire is green. Like Rivendell's like golds and greens, and you know, it's slowly throughout the movies it starts to shift until like you start the second one, and it's like gray because they're going through. Gimli says it at the end of the first one. He says like, you know, you would have us go through Emin Muil. You know, it's a razor sharp rocks and like a labyrinth, and like he says all this stuff. That thing that he said that they would never go through is where Frodo and Sam are going through at that time.
That blows me away too, man, because there's so many things that seem different. Like, I guess specifically with Gandalf, I think that a lot of them have to
Locations
do
were
with Gandalf,
different
but
too.
he seems to change a lot between these movies. That's
Well, he's not technically Gandalf is the thing.
yeah.
Like he's the reincarnation of Saruman. He even mentions it.
Oh my god, dude, this is blowing me away.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That's why he's so different. That's why I was like, he's a dick. I don't like Gandalf the White.
Yeah, Gandalf the White is a little bit pretentious for sure, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of changes, but then also like the locations changed from movie to movie.
Yeah.
They were filming in different spots because like most of it wasn't done in studio. They did a lot of stuff on set. Helm's Deep was shot on a set.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Let's jump into the Two Towers here. Let's move forward and kind of start talking about the Two Towers here a little bit more. I mean, obviously we're talking about all three of them, of course. We're talking about the franchise, but specifically, let's jump into the Two Towers here. This is like completely changing my thought process. The fact that these movies came out back to back to back like that. I did not know that. I really didn't know they came out year after year after year. It makes a lot more sense how they could have been as big as they were because it was such an event for those 3 years. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude, that's really messing me up. It feels to me like the Two Towers is where I hinted at this earlier. It feels like where the actors really settle into their characters. Like everybody like really becomes convincing as who they are. Like I'm completely invested in everybody's character. Like Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli, they're like the trio, and you get into that. That's like them. You get that. Sam and Frodo, they seem to really settle into their relationship and their role moving forward. And Gollum too, like Gollum's character develops a lot in between these movies. But I think the Two Towers is where everybody really kind of settles in. You start to love.
They had more time.
You start to love their characters. They really know who their characters are, and they kind of understand how to best play them. It feels like that's like really where that takes place.
I agree. And dude, seeing Merry and Pippin on their own and stuff, there's so much goodness in that movie.
With the ants, dude, it's unreal. The practical effects are what jump out to me the most about the Two Towers, and I do think it has a lot to do with why I like that one the most. Specifically, obviously, with Helm's Deep. When I see the orcs, or the Uruk-hai, out front, and they're slamming their spears and stuff, or beating their chests or their shields, and you hear that, and they're all really there. You see the smoke coming out of from behind their helmets and their teeth, and they look gnarled and disgusting and terrifying. I feel that every time I watch this movie.
That was all improvised.
Yeah, that suspense gets me every single time without fail. And I don't think that would have been the case if it had all been CGI. If those had all been CGI'd Uruk-hai and like the smoke was kind of off, like there's something to be said about how real it all is. Those practical effects add an element to that movie that is invaluable. It's priceless.
That whole sequence, for the people that were involved in that sequence and shooting that, they loved it and hated it. It was apparently miserable to shoot all that because it was like freezing cold and they had to get into like wet costumes every night.
I did hear something crazy. Like, didn't it take like some crazy amount of time just to do the Battle of Helm's Deep? Like, didn't it take?
Yeah, it was months.
Yeah, I mean that's insane. Could you imagine being an actor or an extra or whatever and like being on this scene and on this project for months at a time? And also it's raining.
And you're having to get into like the silicone.
Yeah, and it's raining during those scenes. So whether that was obviously real rain or fake rain, you're still wet.
It was fake.
You're still getting wet every single day, doing the same things in different ways over. And that's unbelievable, man.
And they're shooting, at night for hours, every single night for months. So like they all got shirts that said "I survived Helm's Deep," and then they crossed out the M, so it says Hell's Deep.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now those shirts are going for $10,000 a piece on eBay.
Yep.
You know who else evolves a lot?
Unwashed.
You know who else evolves a lot are the orcs and the Uruk-hai. It's kind of like the droids in Star Wars almost. Like you start to see like their personalities in the Two Towers. Like in the first one, you've got a couple of them that are around Saruman, and they kind of talk and they have some lines, and you sort of get a little personality, but they seem kind of brutish.
Yeah.
And then in the Two Towers, oh, can we have some meat? Classic line. But you see a lot of the Uruk-hai and the orcs. Like, it starts out with them with Merry and Pippin, and they're, you see them setting up a camp, and then them kind of creating this army. But they kind of gain personality, and they seem to develop a lot more as these movies go on.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely see more. Like, they barely even talk in the first ones.
Right.
But really quick, just to backtrack to the Fellowship of the Ring, dude, Lurtz, the one that kills Boromir, that dude is a badass.
He's huge.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. The guy, I'd like to look up the guy who played him, like who was in that
Oh, he's in all the movies.
Because, he is?
Yeah.
Dude,
so
he's got to be fucking massive.
He plays Lurtz in the first one, which is that Uruk-hai. He plays the Witch King in the second one,
yeah. He's got some stature on him. He's got some size on him.
Yeah, sure. And then he also plays, in the third one, he plays Gothmog, which is the white orc with the twisted arm.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that he was that tall. That guy freaks me out, dude. He's like missing an eye. He's got like a little hairy eye socket and a little cripple hand. It's like, God.
Yeah, he's a badass, man. And the dude's huge. He's a big Kiwi, like from New Zealand.
Nice.
Big guy, long hair and stuff. Like, he's cool. He's a big dude.
He's a beast, dude.
Yeah.
He's a beast. He's like got the perfect physique for that role. Just imagine all you have is a sword. You've got a metal blade that's probably not even that sharp because you've been using it for a while, and like an army of those things are charging at you, dude. Like one-on-one alone, it would be nearly impossible to kill one of those things. But you have an army of thousands of them.
Speaking of the Uruk-hai, which goes into the second one still, dude, the coolest design thing that you don't even see in the movies unless you're like paying attention, they don't have armor on their backs. None of the Uruk-hai do, because the idea is that they don't run away.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah,
dude.
their backs are completely open. Yeah.
As hell.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I noticed, like, dude, I'll tell you what, right now, the Two Towers, see if you can edit this scene in. Everyone knows that. If you've watched these movies, you obviously know. The guy, I always feel so bad for the one random soldier dude who gets, like, that, like, the most gruesome death ever, where he gets hit and then punched in the face with, like, the spike
and you see his face,
and
you're just like, ugh.
He gets, like, headbutted, and he's like, whoa, and then, dude, that orc just decks him with, like, the spike hand. Every time that happens, I'm like, oh, my God.
Now, my favorite character in all the movies, arguably and easily, the when they're all finally, like, when Theoden's like so it begins, and they're all firing the arrows, and he's like, fire, and you see the one guy like, fire, and he turns and he's missing his eye.
He's got no eye.
Favorite guy.
Classic.
Yep.
Oh my dude. All right, if we're talking about favorites in this, honestly, I think my favorite, and I know it's not like creative, but I think my favorite really is Aragorn, dude. Like, I really think he's like the coolest dude ever. But like, again, it's not like unique. It's like a typical favorite. I just
Around
see it
here,
like,
he's known as Strider.
Strider. Yeah. He's my favorite.
Where the fuck
He's
are you
gotta
from,
be my
Texas?
favorite. Yeah, for real. I wrote down on here, we already talked about it. I love that like the orcs all have like an English accent, and like we just kind of accept
Yeah,
that. Like,
sure.
all right, that's cool. And like some of them are even different. Like some of the accents are even different. Like the Urukai have like their own voice thing going on. We ain't had nothing but maggot ate bread for 3 stinking days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't we have some meat?
What's
Oh
about
my
their
God.
legs?
Yeah, and then again, dude, like just visually speaking, try like good luck. Name a movie franchise with better visuals overall.
Dude, there is no movie that I have seen to this day that has a better battle sequence than Helm's Deep ever. I've never seen a movie that compares.
How does it do it? Like I watch it over and over, and it's like every single thing is perfect. The suspense that they set up, the visual aspect of it, like seeing that just
It's a combination
almost
of everything,
seemingly
man.
endless army of orcs, Urukai and orcs, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then like everything, dude, like them breaching the wall. Like there's so many iconic scenes, like the like shroud of arrows that they shoot out over the wall at him. Like
Yeah.
Aragorn telling him to fire and the arrows going right past his face. Like how it's raining, it's dark. It's like it's flawless.
Yeah.
It's a flawless sequence of events in that war. It's unreal.
It's absolutely like Peter Jackson's like dream. I guarantee you. Like he was always like yes, I finally get to do this. Like I guarantee it. Like because the battles, both Minas Tirith and Helm's Deep are phenomenal. Like you know what it is that you don't see a lot of aerial shots in big battles.
Right.
And so when you see Helm's Deep from above and you see the scope of the army and stuff, I think it helps paint the picture for you. Because a
makes
lot
it
of
more
movies,
real.
like Kingdom of Heaven kind of did this, where there was like some big battles, but you don't really see the immensity of the army. Most of it is very close up and stuff. And then,
Yeah, it's like the front lines charging each other, but
Yeah.
then the rest of it is like the individual battle scenes, just in this fury of moving
right.
metal
And so you don't
whatnot.
really know what's going on, and you're not able to follow it. But
Right.
and on top of that, the Lord of the Rings was able to show you the wider battles. On top of
Yeah,
that, you have the suspense. With like
and you
the
see
children
the
on
sequences playing out, like, and the suspense grows. Like, the Helm's Deep, they seem to have things fairly well under control, and even they're talking, is this it, Saruman? Is this all you can conjure? And then all of a sudden now there's ladders, and you're like, okay, yeah, and then all of a sudden they breach the wall, and like it's like it just builds. The suspense continues and continues to build throughout the whole thing. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Like I will go on YouTube to this day and just watch like the clips of the Battle of Helm's Deep, dude, and like that, like you just watch it. It's
Hell yeah.
like it's the one of the most entertaining like sequences that's ever been done in movies.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Absolutely.
It has to be.
It is so good and so like just fun to watch, like especially like as somebody who enjoys like battle sequences like that. It is just so well shot. And then Haldir's death in that is like the saddest thing.
Haldir.
Yeah.
He gets like sliced in the back of the head. Oh
Yep.
man. And so who was that guy? Like he was just an elvish like general?
Pretty
kinda?
much, yeah.
Elven general, and like he and Aragorn knew each other somehow.
Yeah, Aragorn was raised by elves.
What?
Yeah, Aragorn was raised by elves. That's why Arwen and him know each other, because Elrond raised him.
Were we supposed to know that from watching the films?
In the extended edition, there's some hints and scenes that kind of...
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Those extended editions are incredible, but my God, they add like an hour
Yeah.
to each one of those movies.
It's like, I think it's like
And,
30
it's all
minutes or
good,
45 minutes, yeah.
But holy shit, like, yeah, you just, and like half of it is just like an extra orc getting his head sliced off or something like that. You're like,
Yeah.
all right, sweet.
Cool.
But
An
damn,
extra
those
3 minutes of
extended-
battle.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, an extra 30 minutes of orcs getting sliced up.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of lore that I did not know about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like, just even talking about this now. Like, I very much understand Lord of the Rings on a surface level. I love, like, the visuals, and, like, I'm a simple man, you know what I mean? I see people fighting orcs in, like, in a war, and I watch. That's pretty much it. Hey, did you notice? It's kind of a funny scene. Did you notice? And I brought this up in the Jurassic Park episode where, like, there was the Velociraptor with the hand on it, like the little bit of an arrow.
I think I know what you're talking about. With the sword?
What is it? No, there's a sword thing.
Oh,
No,
okay,
what's the
then what are
sword
you
thing?
saying?
No. So there's a part that you can see a camera in the film. So if you can try to find the clip, and I'll try to show it to you. It's pretty easy to see. You can probably find it on YouTube. When the Uruk-hai are charging up the like bridge with the big log, like the battering ram log, like they're about to, and you see like the bulge of the battering ram like going through the shields, and they're like getting knocked off the sides and stuff. So there's a scene right where the front of the battering ram log comes out, and they're like walking up. If you look on the left side of the screen, which is not where your focus is, you can actually see the front of a big camera and like aluminum foil on it. And it's like, see if you can edit in that clip right here for the people at home. But I can't wait for you to watch that because it's funny. And obviously, like, it doesn't take you out of it. It is what it is. But there's totally a scene where you can see like the front foot of a camera. You can totally tell it's the lens, and it's right there.
I didn't know that.
And it's like just in the shot. It's actually really funny. But what is the sword thing? What were you gonna say?
At the beginning of the movie, when Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are all kind of running to Merry and Pippin, and they run into the Rohirrim, and the Rohirrim kind of surround them. And they all have their swords and stuff, and then Éomer hops off of his horse, and he's like, tell me your name, horse master, and all that shit happens.
I would chop off your head, dwarf, if it stood but a little taller from the ground. Dude, there's some classic lines in that movie. Classic.
Don't even start quoting, man. I could literally tell you every line.
Right. So what happens?
So after Éomer hands him the horses and stuff, and he says, I do not trust to hope, and he gets on his horse and he starts riding away. As he's getting on his horse, you can see that his sword is kind of like pointed down, like because of the for whatever reason it just like was top heavy in that moment, and it like instead of resting like this, it's resting forward. And he gets on his horse and the blade falls out of his scabbard as he rides it up.
Does it really?
Yeah, I'll try to put that in.
Put that. Yeah, see if you can put that clip right here too. I gotta look that up.
Yeah,
I love that kind of stuff. I don't know why. Like, it's just funny to me. But I've watched that movie so many times, and I've never, at least 7 times now, and I've never noticed that part.
But that's the only one. I don't know of any other. Did you know that all of the horsemen in right there in that scene, and in all of the movies where they have extras, they're all women?
I did know that.
Yeah.
I saw something on YouTube about that. Like, they couldn't find just all the people who had horses or who rode horses there were all female.
Yeah.
And so they basically had like entire female armies. Like, that's awesome.
Bearded women.
Right. Like, fucking right.
Yeah.
Hey, they did phenomenal, dude.
Yeah.
They did phenomenal. The horse riding in that is insane. It's just, I think The Two Towers, it starts off like probably the first third of that movie. I don't know though. It's like there's great action in the beginning where like the Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli is there like a name for that trio, by the way? Like, is there like an accepted name for the three of them?
I don't think so.
So when the three of them are like following Merry and Pippin, that's exciting. And when they meet the Rohirrim, that's exciting. There is a little bit of downtime, but not a ton. I mean, you go and find the king, and Gandalf like draws the curse of draws Saruman out of him.
Gandalf.
I will draw you, Saruman, as what does he say? As poison is drawn from a wound. Dude, god damn, it is intense, man.
I told you to take the wizard's staff.
Right, and they just start beating them all up. That guy drives that. Oh, that guy makes me so mad. The little snake tongue dude. Yes. Oh my god.
Did you know he had to shave his eyebrows for the movie, and like his girlfriend was so pissed? I think his wife. Like when they.
Sorry, baby. I'm just starring in one of the biggest films of all time. Like, don't worry, they'll grow back.
But like, I guess he was on the phone, like in behind the scenes. He was on the phone. He was like, "Yeah, so babe, I have to shave my eye because he's American. I have to shave my eyebrows." And like, I guess like on the phone there was just like a silence, and then she was just like, "Fuck!" Like, but
she was not thrilled.
And Theoden, Bernard Hill, who plays Theoden, he didn't know that the guy who plays Grima was American, and so at one point, like, he'd never heard him out of character. And so at one point he just goes up to him and like they're just talking and he responds in an American accent and he's like, "Dude, that is the worst American accent I've ever heard."
He's like, "Dude, this is my real voice, asshole." Yeah. Oh my god. So you know what another funny thing about these movies is? Dude, almost everybody's hair in these movies had to be fake.
Oh yeah.
Like, unless they grew their hair out. Like, Gandalf's hair is probably not real. Legolas is like Orlando Bloom. I don't think his hair ever got that long. Like,
his hair was also dark. It's black. So
right. So like a lot of these people's hair is like not actually their hair, but they do a really good job of making it seem like their actual hair.
Yeah, because Aragorn or Viggo Mortensen, his hair is like red, like cherry red.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what they did with his. I'm not sure, because his wasn't so long that it would be impossible to have him have grown it out and maybe dyed it or something.
Yeah.
I have no clue.
I don't know.
I have no clue. But again, it's just a testament to the effects on these movies, man. Because you don't notice or you don't think about any of that stuff when you're watching them.
No, they did a damn good job. They did a damn good job with like the makeup and everything. Did you know that John Rhys Davies, who plays Gimli, was allergic to all the prosthetics that he was wearing?
Really?
Yeah, so that's why, like, if you look at Gimli, his face is like kind of swollen. It's because like he's wearing
He's having an allergic reaction the whole time.
yeah, every, like, literally the entire movies, and he had to suffer through it because, like, Gimli, like, they had to put a prosthetic nose. Basically, his entire face is prosthetics to make it like bigger and chunkier to kind of make him look shorter.
Yeah, kind of dwarvish.
Yeah, because
Right.
he's like 6'1", like he's a big guy. Yeah, I know.
Why would they
I
cast
know.
somebody 6'1" for that role, dude?
Because
Like,
they
couldn't
knew
have
they
found
could
someone
get away
shorter?
with it, with like
Yeah.
camera effects and stuff.
The whole I don't know, the entire thing for all three movies, like you said, the level of attention and how much work went into producing these movies blows me away, dude. It blows me away. I don't get it. I don't get how anybody could take, they must have had staffs of people, like you said, hundreds of people for everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
For everything. All right. You 100 people are going to deal with everyone's costumes. You 100 people are going to deal with everybody's makeup, prosthetics, all that. You 100 people are going to, choreograph the fight scenes and the war and get all these. I mean, it's insane. You 100 people are going to do the set.
There was so much going on that Peter Jackson couldn't direct the entire movie himself.
Yeah, he had to call in help.
He had to have people step in. Like, it's not abnormal for there on a film set to be a second camera crew directed by somebody. He had, I think, 4 camera crews. So there were 4 different directors doing scenes at any time of the day.
Wow.
Yeah. People he trusted, and then he would go and approve what they did, or they would call him and like video call him and stuff, and like he would say, no, change this, and he'd be running. Like, basically Peter Jackson didn't sleep for 3 years, and it's crazy.
My God. So what is it about the Two Towers that you think makes it your favorite?
The end, man. It really, it's, for me, the Two Towers, it's about that battle sequence. Not because of the battle, but because of the desperation. There is something so sad and beautiful when they took the poem right out of the book, where Theoden is putting on his armor, and he's like, where is the horn that was blowing in the west? Like, he's like reciting all of that poem while he's being adorned with his armor, and then you're seeing the sequences of like the children picking up shields that they can barely lift and the helmets that are too big for them, and then old
They give
guys.
like a 12-year-old kid like a little club, like a little hook club. I'm like, what's he gonna do with that, dude? Like, the kid can't even swing that thing. They couldn't even give him something sharp.
Just that desperation in that moment, and seeing all of these refugees basically running, and there's no way they're gonna win. There's no way they're gonna win. They all know they're gonna die tonight. And then you see the elves. Yeah. Then I shall die as a fuck. I should have said that in Elvish.
Then I shall die as one of them.
But no, just seeing all of that, and then the elves showing up, which doesn't happen in the books.
I heard that too. I'd heard that was not.
But
accurate.
it is one of those changes that I am totally cool with.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's a great moment.
And just seeing them march up, and then like now it's not 100 people, it's 2,000. So maybe they can win. There's like a little bit of hope there if they can just hold out, and dude, that little bit of hope sets up.
No war corn.
Yeah, dude, man, that part.
They just come marching up. You're like, oh, what the hell?
And then they're all like,
they're pretty. Dude, the elves are like robotic in this, man. Like the way they shoot those arrows and everything, it's pretty unreal.
they're
I agree with you. That battle, and then just like the ending, how it's all set up is insane. I will say Gandalf was kind of nowhere to be found in the second movie.
yeah, because he was
Like,
he was collecting the Rohirrim. He was like, hey guys,
I guess.
yeah, remember?
Yeah, I guess he was getting all the Rohirrim. But yeah, it's like you'd think. I don't know. It's like again, the magic that Gandalf uses in all these movies is definitely more subtle. But it does seem to me like he could have been a little more useful. And I don't want to like go too much into the loopholes, because to be totally honest, I don't care. I love the movie so much that like I'm okay with the events as they transpired. It just seems like Gandalf's role could have been a little bit more useful. But again, this is me thinking like, oh, he's going to be out there like doing lightning bolts and shooting fireballs, and like, right, like that's not what it is. Like that's not who he is.
Yeah.
So it's fair. It makes it more fair. Like it would be stupid if these huge battles and he like summons a storm and is like shocking orcs with lightning and stuff. Like it'd be too easy.
I think it was cool seeing him ride out and then blinding everyone. Like he knew that the sun was going to rise right there.
Right.
And so blinding
the sun
them all.
coming up and blinding them was another. Does that happen in the books?
I I believe it does, but it's not Rohirrim that come; it's Rangers.
Oh,
Yeah, the Rangers come, and so the elves don't happen, but the Rangers do arrive at the end of the battle and kind of save the day. And so I think that's why they felt it was okay. It's like it's not Rangers, but it's elves, and we're gonna bring Rohirrim. It just they felt it kind of tied the story together a little more for what they were doing. And
they took a creative, what's it called?
I'm gonna get a lot of
Like a
hate for
creative.
this, but I actually think the changes that they made the story better.
Oh, dude, I think a lot of people would actually agree with you. I feel the same way about Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I've read the book and I've watched the movies, and I think the movies are better. I think the changes they made in the movies make it a better
There
story.
are some amazing scenes that I wish were in the movies, but unfortunately with books as dense as those, it's just they don't really push the story forward. Like they took out characters, they gave lines that other characters would have had to other characters, but it's like they're just trying to tell the story, and the story is about Frodo and Sam. It's not about Tom Bombadil that you meet in the first book, who kind of is like a wayward character that you meet in one chapter and then you never see him again. Like it's just
they don't have time. They don't have time to bring all
they
that.
don't.
In. I mean,
because the movies are already almost 4 hours
right,
long.
and how long does it take you to read the books? It takes you weeks to get through the books. I mean, if you're like me and you don't read super fast, and you don't read all that often, it takes weeks, if not months, to get through books sometimes. Like they can't,
Now, the Silmarillion, I heard that they were supposed to be doing a television series about it. I think HBO was doing it.
I wouldn't be surprised. It seems to be where a lot of this media sources are heading, where they kind of create these TV series now.
I hope it's good, because the Silmarillion is a damn good series. It's a damn good book.
Yeah,
it's
I
a
had
collection
heard
of
something
stories.
that they were doing a Lord of the Rings TV show.
Yeah,
I think I had heard something about that. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm hoping it's still happening.
I'm hoping it's good. I mean, if it happens, fine, but let it be good. I don't know.
But to go back to what you were saying, yeah, I agree. The Two Towers, I think, is the point you were trying to get to. The Two Towers does feel a little slow at times.
At times.
Yeah.
There are some heavy.
There's a lot of story that gets pushed.
Yeah, at times, but it's hard because it'll be slow, and then they get attacked by wargs. It'll be slow, and then there's the battle for Helm's Deep. It'll be slow, and then they find the Rohirrim. It's like it's a little bit of slowness, but it's in between these like really epic scenes, so it kind of evens out, and it makes it okay.
Yeah, I agree.
It makes it okay. But I mean, the Two Towers to me is it's kind of the total package. The characters, the acting is all phenomenal from everybody. The practical effects are perfect. They're just what they needed to be. The scenes that they're able to set up are great. And then this massive climax in the battle for Helm's Deep at the end that just takes that movie over the top. And it's long. That's what I like about it too. It's not like the battle for Helm's
20
Deep
minutes
is
of
like
screen
10
time.
minutes long and then it's over. Like, no, dude, that's like a significant portion of that movie. It's a long battle.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of the whole movie? Like a specific part, not like Helm's Deep, the battle, but like the part that you like seeing on screen.
My favorite part is right before the battle technically starts. When like it's starting to rain and like that suspense is at its peak and the orcs start doing their cheering thing, and then basically the guy's arrow slips and they run forward and the battle starts. That probably 10 minutes surrounding the start of the Battle of Helm's Deep on either end is my favorite part of that movie.
The men say that we will not live out the night.
Oh, I know, dude. That kid, he's
there is
like,
always
my name
hope.
Is Hafmir, son of Famamina, or whatever. And he's like,
Hala?
Yeah, whatever.
Hala
it
is his
I
name?
don't know. I'm just making stuff up. I know it's something like
Hala,
that.
son of Hama.
Right, and he
my
like
lord.
takes the time to talk to him, and like, and it's like it feels cold and dark, and like you feel nervous, like you know what's coming, and you feel nervous, like that. It's a testament to the director, man. It's unbelievable.
There is always hope.
Yep.
Hala, son of Hama.
This is a good sword. Like you could imagine being that kid,
and it's not a good sword. It's like all like rusted
and
shit.
It and like showing that it's good. Like just that, you got to imagine. Like if I was that kid, I would feel so much better right now. Like oh shit, like if this like Ranger King guy is telling me this is a good sword, like I'm set. Like oh man,
agreed.
But yeah, what about you? I mean, that like 10 minutes on either end of the battle starting is definitely my favorite part of that movie. What about you?
For me, the part that I love watching the most is the berserker with like the torch.
Yeah.
When he's just running.
Legolas.
And then goes, bring him down.
Bring him down. And he's like shooting
and he
those
just
arrows
takes
like
3 arrows, dude.
And he like goes into his neck and digs another one into his neck, and then he just dives in. Yeah, that's an intense moment.
Yeah.
And like the music stops, like you
dude.
just hear the like guttural sound and him jumping in, and the whole thing just blows
and then
up.
just the moment right after when you just see Theoden's face, like fuck. Where he's like, dude, because he's boasted how many times in this movie that nobody's ever breached the wall, and like, nope, not today.
Crops can be replanted. Homes
Yeah.
rebuilt. Yeah, dude. Oh my God, that movie, like,
Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?
where was Gondor? Yeah, dude. He's a phenomenal actor. He does a great
Oh, yeah, he
job
is.
in that role.
Yeah.
He really, really does.
Yeah.
Two Towers has got to be one of my. I mean, you guys all know. We've said this a million times. I think Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time. Two Towers is right there. I mean, dude, it is right there. I still think Jurassic Park as a movie overall is more entertaining. I think from beginning to end is more entertaining, a personal preference. But the Two Towers does something with the Battle for Helm's Deep that I have never seen again in any other movie ever.
Agreed.
Ever.
And there's a reason that it's in the top 100 films of
Rightfully so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's jump into The Return of the King, because obviously this is like the cream of the crop here. This is the conclusion, the big climax to the story in the end, and this thing.
Oh wait, before we can't pass the best fucking writing in the Two Towers, dude. I have a note and I forgot about that. The scene where Sam is like, where Frodo has the ring and he's about to give it to the Nazgul, and Sam has to like pull him down.
Yeah.
And is that in the third one?
I think that's.
I think it's at the end of the second one.
It's the second one where they meet Aramir, right? And they're or not Aramir. Oh yeah, it is Aramir, isn't it? Who is it?
Faramir, yeah.
Faramir. Yeah, my bad. No,
Yeah. But
wait. Who is it? Because they go to right because Boromir's already been killed.
yes.
Yeah. That's right.
And Faramir lets them go at the end of the
Yes,
second one.
Yes, that's exactly. That's
So,
exactly.
but yeah, that scene where dude, that writing is so good. Where like, Frodo's like, dude, what are we fighting for?
Uh-huh.
And dude, Sean Astin, every time I see that scene, man, it brings me to tears.
I forgot that was in the second
he's
one.
like,
I don't
"There's
know
some
why I think
good-"
that one's
yeah.
in the third one, because that city they're defending with that like white marble stone, you see a lot of that in
Osgiliath,
Return of the
yeah.
King, so it makes you think Return of the King. But you're right, that was
Yeah.
in the Two Towers. I forgot that happened.
Yeah, he's like, there's some good in the world, Mr. Frodo.
Dude, and
it's
how
worth fighting for.
Oh my God, I know. There's good in this world, and it's worth fighting for.
What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
Oh man, yeah,
that's
that
such
is
good writing,
that is
man.
intense.
Such
Sam
good
has
writing.
got to be one of the best characters in these movies too.
Tolkien said that the hero of the story is not Frodo, but Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And when we were watching these, my wife was asking me, Rachel was like, she's like, Frodo seems like he gets kind of like kind of whiny and stuff at the end. And I was like, I hear you, but also remember that he's been carrying this ring the whole time. And it's like, it starts weighing on him more and more and more as it goes
And
on.
physically, like literally,
Yeah, like it
you
literally.
can see
That's
the
what I was telling her. Like, he
indentation.
even talks. He's like, it's getting heavy and stuff. Like the physical weight that it's like.
Yeah.
And I tell her that I'm like, you got to understand. Like Sam, yes, he's there and he's going through the same crap, but not having that ring on you makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like you can pretty much take what Sam went through and then like double the amount of suffering, and that's what Frodo went through. So like
Yeah.
I still give respect to Frodo in the sense that
Hell yeah.
he's doing all this stuff while this ring is like fighting with all this power to try to like corrupt him and stuff.
And that he was able to withstand it for so long. It took
Yeah.
him I think it was 12 or 13 months
I
to
think
go
at
from
the
the Shire
I think
to,
at the
to
end,
Mordor.
even the movies, they say 13 months. I'm pretty sure they
Yeah.
say 13 months from beginning to end.
So, can you imagine,
And
dude,
most
wearing that
people
thing
couldn't
for that
even have
long?
the ring for a day. Like some
Yeah.
people are getting corrupted before they even have it. Look at
Boromir, dude. Boromir tried to
He
kill him.
never even
yeah.
had the ring, and he tried to kill him
Yeah.
over it. It corrupted him. So I get it that like yeah, Sam is the hero, and I feel that, but also I think you can't discredit the fact that Frodo carried the ring as long as he did, and it weighed on him as much as it did.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you're right. The writing between, we didn't talk about them enough, but you're right. The story, like the sub-story and the writing of Frodo and Sam and Gollum, that could be its own movie just in and of itself. The story that they go
Which
through.
it is. It's called The Return of the King.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then you get into the Return of the King, and the whole thing seems to be this epic sort of battle. Like you see a
Yeah.
lot of the orcs, And it's not all Uruk-hai this time. It's orcs and goblins or whatever, and some Uruk-hai in there. But a pretty intense mix. And then, of course, everything that goes on. It just the Return of the King seems so dark compared to even the Two Towers, really, overall. It seems so much darker than the other ones.
The Return of the King?
Yeah, the Return of the King. The Return of the King does. Definitely. The only thing I'll say about the Return of the King that kind of takes me out of it a little bit is I do wish we could have seen a little bit more of Minas Tirith. And I think it would have been cool to have seen a battle for Minas Tirith where, you know, what do they call him? The steward. Where the steward, you know, the crazy-ass guy, where he hadn't been so bad. Like, it would have been cool to see a fully prepared Minas Tirith taking on an orc army, because it does kind of seem like the orcs have this advantage where they're this huge force. They come up and Minas Tirith's not even ready for it. Like, dude, they're not even prepared because the steward's such a piece of shit.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I don't think that they don't really explain it very well in the movies, but the city that you mentioned, where it's all marble and stuff,
right,
that
on
they're
the river
fighting
there,
in, yeah, it's literally across the way from Minas Tirith. So like that is, like, you can see it from Minas Tirith. If you're standing on the wall, you see the city right there.
Right. I think you do see that in the movies. I believe that they do show.
Yeah. So the entire army of Gondor was in Osgiliath, and the orcs took it, and you see that. You see them take it from Faramir.
Oh, I didn't realize that was like their whole army in there.
Yeah, I mean, it got wrecked. I mean, when Frodo and Sam are there, they're being attacked.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why Frodo and Sam were let go, because Faramir was like, you know what, the ring is here. It needs to go somewhere safe. I don't want it. Go.
Oh, so Frodo and Sam were all the way in Minas Tirith at one point. And then they make their way to Minas, whatever, the like evil, evil city that like has the beacon of light come out of it.
Yeah, if you're looking at Minas Tirith on the map, Osgiliath is right across the river. If you keep that direction, they hit the mountains of Mordor, and they climbed the mountains into Mordor.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I didn't think about the fact that Faramir had taken them to Osgiliath. I didn't realize that's where they were, but that makes sense.
They were right there, yeah.
It's crazy how in this story, like they're all kind of in the same place at different times.
Yeah, within like maybe a couple 100 miles of each other.
Right. Yeah, they're not that far away from each other at any point, really, in these films.
So Gondor is unprepared because its entire force is gone.
Okay. See, I thought it was like that Osgiliath had its own like army, and those were like the people you see with Faramir and like his dad, or not his dad, but whoever that was, his like right-hand man who gets killed. The one where like the cripple orc like stabs the thing through him. His, His like I almost said compadre. His like comrade, basically. You know, his soldier in arms or whatever, his brother in arms. But okay, so their army was in Osgiliath, and then
because Osgiliath is an outpost, it's
gotcha.
just
and they didn't want Osgiliath to fall because it was like a natural defense being on the river. And
exactly, and that's why Faramir went back to try and capture it.
Gotcha. I just thought that the steward was just kind of pretending none of this was happening and just trying to block it all out, and then
no, he underestimated them.
Gotcha.
He basically said, like, he even mentioned it to Faramir. He's like, well, why'd you let the city fall? Why did you let the orcs take Osgiliath? Like, it wouldn't have happened if Boromir was here.
Yep. Dude, that's
and so Faramir goes back.
That whole dynamic is so sad. How like Faramir is like not loved by their father, like the steward, and then like, you know, he basically rides out to his death when Merry is singing. Oh my. Pippin, sorry, when Pippin is singing, dude, and their guys are charging in, and the orcs are like about to fire. That gets
so
me.
Good.
That gets me every time. It's like, holy shit, these guys are like, they're all gonna die.
Yep, and they all do except for Faramir.
Right. Now I will say, I've been ragging on Gandalf a little bit, but when all of those soldiers of Gondor are coming back, and they're being picked off by the Nazgul, and he does that, like, and the music's real, like, pristine and, like, epic, and he's like shining light on him. That I do kind of wish we saw a little bit more of Gandalf doing that.
I agree.
And also, speaking of Gandalf, dude, you know one thing that we never get, that they totally build up to and we never get? The Witch King says, like, when he's getting suited up, and they're like, what of the wizard? And he's like, I will break him. Like, dude, they never fight. You never see the Witch King and Gandalf even interact, which I thought was a total letdown.
You do. I don't know if maybe it's in the extended edition. I think it is only in the extended edition.
Oh.
Gandalf, and it's right when Pippin like runs up to Gandalf. He's like, Denethor's burning Faramir alive.
Right.
And they run up, and then Gandalf says, "Get on the horse," and then he gets on the horse, and they run up the steps towards the citadel up at the top.
Yeah.
And then the Witch King lands right in front of him. And the Witch King, basically, they have like a quick dialogue, and then Gandalf is like raising his staff, and the Witch King straight up destroys the staff with his mind.
What?
Like, Gandalf raises his staff, and the Witch King does like some weird chant or something, and the staff shatters into pieces. And then he's like raising his sword like he's about to kill Gandalf, and then you hear the horns of the Rohirrim arriving, and the Witch King kind of looks at Gandalf, looks out at the Rohirrim arriving, and then flies off. Yeah,
dude, I gotta look that scene up as soon as this is done. I think that's only in the extended version because I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah,
and they just kind of, I guess you don't say anything about Gandalf's staff, but I thought he had his staff when he was on his horse, and he goes and knocks the dude off of the flame pit. I thought he had his staff.
You're right.
Oh, now I'm confused, dude. I got to go back and watch this.
No. Oh, no, you're right. I don't know, man. I'm going to have to look that up, but he definitely shatters the staff.
Oh my, dude, I got to watch that. That sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that the Witch King and Gandalf ever meet because I remember they build up to that. Like he's like, "I will break him." And then like I'm like, "Oh fuck, this is going to be like this is insane." I'm like sweating. I'm like, "Okay, here we go." Like thinking there's going to be some crazy mage battle between these two. And then you don't really get it. But I didn't realize that they like have that little interaction.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is cool. No, not to say that the way he died wasn't cool. Like I like that when she's like, "I am no man," and she stabs him in the face. That's perfectly fine. That is incredible.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of.
I have lost
of him fighting with him. So all right, hold on, pause.
Hey Siri.
Connect on FaceTime.
Hey Siri. Nope.
And we're back. Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting a little more between Gandalf and the Witch King, but that makes sense. I need to go and look at that extended battle. Dude, what about the freaking Rohirrim showing up, though, to that battle? That's another incredible moment.
Epic.
Yeah.
See, here's the only thing I don't like compared to Helm's Deep. I don't like that the Battle of Minas Tirith is, like, in broad daylight.
Ooh, like, yeah, that's true. It's not at night. Well, it goes into the night. It goes into the night when they're breaking through the gate.
It does, but I guess I mean more of the color palette rather than the daylight.
Yeah, it's very
like,
yellow.
I wish it was like it is, and it feels beautiful and you know, in a weird way. But I wish that like maybe when the Rohirrim showed up, there was a break in the light.
You're right.
You know, like to have the battle be like overcast and feel dark. It can be in the daytime. I don't care, but it just felt too golden and too beautiful. And I think it would have been nice to see the city look dim until the Rohirrim show up, and then you see the sun behind them, kind of like how at Helm's Deep the same thing.
Yeah. Dude, it always cracks me up whenever, and Lord of the Rings is definitely guilty of this, and any of the big war movies are, but it always cracks me up when you'll see like a massive army pull up, and then there's like one guy in the front like yelling, and somehow everybody can hear him. He's like, "There will be a day when the fear of men, blah, 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 but it is not this day." Dude, like, I could barely hear you, like, through my headphones directly into my, like, earbud. And, like, the guys, like, 10 rows back are like, "What? What did he say?"
Everybody starts screaming, "Oh, shit.
I think he said we're getting ice cream. Ice cream. Yeah. They all, like, charge forward. Like, dude, they have no idea. Like, but, yeah, that always kind of cracks me up, too. And, like, one guy in the front.
That was Bernard Hill's idea to do that.
What's that?
Bernard Hill, the guy who plays Theoden, that was his idea to do that.
He's like riding
to
and like
hit the
hitting all the
spears.
spears. Yeah, it's incredible, man. That. Why do you think that the Battle for Minas Tirith is not, to us, is not as cool as Helm's Deep?
I think part of that is because of the color. I think part of it is that the tone isn't set properly in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it feels hopeful because you don't see as much of the desperation. You know, you're not made aware through the scenes that the army is diminished. Like instead, you see a defensive line with trebuchets. Gandalf is there. It's a massive city with huge walls. There's 7 walls, dude, leading up to the top. And so it just doesn't feel as desperate. And then you know that the Rohirrim are coming. You know that Aragorn is bringing an army of dead people. You don't really know the pirates that are coming. You don't really see how many there are or whatever. So like they don't do a good job of setting up how many enemies there are, as like they did with Helm's Deep, where you have multiple scenes where you see thousands and thousands of Uruk-hai just marching.
Yeah, that's insightful, and I think I would have to agree with you 100%. It's like it almost seems like the battle for Minas Tirith happens too quickly. Like everything kind of happens too quickly. Like they're almost trying to get to that, like them going to the Black Gates and like kind of
Because there's two climaxes in the Return of the King.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There are.
Because you have that battle and then you have the last battle at the Black Gate.
You're right. I think you're right. It doesn't seem as desolate. And it's like for having this big, grand, incredible city, somehow I feel like they did a better job at Helm's Deep fighting. Like I feel like that Helm's Deep army was much more formidable than all these soldiers at Minas Tirith.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is that when they were designing the orcs, the Uruk-hai, so there's the orcs. There's goblins, which are the tiny ones that you see in Moria. Then there's the orcs, which you see a couple times. Like that, was about their legs. Those guys are orcs. But those orcs were mixed in with some of the Uruk-hai, and they were the ones that were carrying Merry and Pippin. You can see the difference in their size and stuff. But then there's the what they call the super orcs, which were the elite unit of Mordor that marched on Helm's Deep. And so the orcs that marched on Helm's Deep were bigger than Uruk-hai.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so you can see there's like a chart in the behind the scenes where you see the size differences, and the Uruk-hai and the super orcs are like, they're huge.
Yeah, they're massive.
And so you see that it's not a horde of orcs in front of Minas Tirith. These are like well-trained, uniformed, like there's a defensive like strategy to them.
Exactly.
So they're not
general,
just idiots.
what is his name? The dude with the cripple hand?
Gothmog.
You have the general and Gothmog who's kind of giving orders. There's more dialogue and less just rage.
Yeah, and so they seem to be a little more organized, and I think that's part of it. They were better at attacking.
Yeah.
But you're right. Still, like the desolation wasn't there. It would have been cool to see like the army of orcs march over dead bodies of humans.
Right.
And things like that. And
almost like it's almost cool. Like, and I don't want like I almost am careful saying this because I wouldn't want to have taken away such an epic scene. But it's almost like I wish the Rohirrim had already been there prior to the war starting, just so we could have seen what that would have been like if like they had already been able to set up. And I get it, like them charging in and not stopping and slamming straight through the orcs and into the Oliphants and all that. That's insane. But it just seems like the whole thing happens kind of quickly. Like for this massive city of kings, they don't seem to be able to defend themselves all that well.
Yeah, and honestly, dude, like for me, one of the things that takes me out of the movie is the Army of the Dead.
It just seems like a cheat code. It seems way too easy. It seems way too easy.
I would have been like, no, I'm not going to let you go. You need to go into Mordor and clear them out. Then you're cool. Because like, what is going to take? What effort is there for you?
Dude,
you're not going to die.
It's nothing. Okay, let's go do this, and in 30 minutes, it'll all be done. It's nothing. Dude.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Like,
that's
I hold
that's
your
kind of
oaths
a widespread
fulfilled.
thing. That's kind of a widespread sentiment. They seem like super overpowered, dude.
Yeah. It would have been cool if it was like zombies or something. Like I don't know. It was definitely like the hand of God coming in and helping them in this battle.
I also can't help but think like by the time they get in, like, dude, they've already basically lost that city. Like, it's destroyed. The people have already been ravaged by these orcs and trolls and wargs. Like, you see wargs inside the city chewing on people too, and it's like the whole thing is it's like already over. They've already lost, and then they're like, okay, well, we already lost this cool city. Like, let's just have the ghost guys come in and clean it all up.
Yeah, like, what are you doing?
It did seem it seemed a little convenient, and you're absolutely right. It would have made a lot of sense to just say, okay, now we're going to send you into Mordor so we can finish this thing really quick.
Or just send them there first. Like, lose the city. Like, sorry, but we could lose the battle and win the war.
Yeah.
If we just, and it annoys me because literally from where they were on the river, like looking at the map, it's the same travel distance. You could have just gone that way instead of that way.
And also, Aragorn clearly knew of the lore and what was going on with those guys because nobody told him about that whole story. And he went in there and told him, he's like, the blade has been rebuilt, and you will hold your oath and fight for me. So like,
the line was
you
broken.
wouldn't think that he would have thought to do that before Helm's Deep and all that stuff. Like, well, wait, when did they give him the sword?
In the third one.
Oh, and they give it to him right before he goes into that cave.
Yeah.
So in his defense, he didn't know that blade had been rebuilt.
Right.
Damn it. See, here I am thinking I'm all smart. coming up with
Anduil,
loopholes.
flame of the west.
Anduil, flame of the west, forged from the shards of Narsil.
Yeah, that's dude. That's fucking awesome. Yeah, and it, I don't know. It just doesn't quite set up the desperation, like you said, the desolation rather. Well, both of those battles. It's the color palette. It's the structure of the war. It's the how many people there are. It just is for having such a big, cool city to defend. I just feel like it was a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I agree. And
Also
even the last battle felt underwhelming.
Well, yeah, and the last battle is more symbolic than anything.
It is.
It's
they're
like
sacrificing
it's almost,
themselves.
Yeah, they're basically sacrificing themselves. It's they're surrounded by orcs. It's not really much of there's not much more going on than the last battle felt very much like a city of God, kind of like flailing of metal. Not city of God. What's Jesus, you referenced it earlier. The movies about the Catholic wars or whatever.
Oh, Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven, City of God. We just watched that. Kingdom of Heaven. The last battle feels more like Kingdom of Heaven, where it's just kind of flailing up close battle. And then the climax of this movie is a little bit over the top with Gollum coming in and the biting the finger off thing. It's a little much. I will say it's a little much, but it's just the icing on the cake, man. It's the extra stress right there at the end.
And I agree with most people that there were too many endings. I think if they stopped fading to black, then people wouldn't have had a problem. Just cut to the next scene, but they kept and black. Movie's over? Nope.
Nope.
Come back.
Story's not over yet.
Stop doing that.
Frodo and Sam somehow survived this massive explosion in Mount Doom. When you watch that movie,
which I feel like the heat would have killed you.
They would have been dead
alone.
They absolutely would have been dead. That explosion blew up the top of that volcano where they were. They're dead.
And just being that close to the lava and all of the fumes and stuff.
Right, I don't think people understand. If you watch a video of those guys in those metal suits getting lava samples for scientific research, they can't even go within 10 feet of it. Without having to back up because it's so hot, and it's just
the sulfur and stuff.
I don't 100% buy that, but it was cool, obviously, with the ring going in the metal, and dude, when the ring sits on that little charred piece and doesn't go in, I'm like, what the fuck, what's going on? Yeah, and then it sinks in. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. But overall, I think all these movies serve their purpose perfectly, and I guess when you make movies that back to back to back, you can get away with doing that so well. But the Fellowship of the Ring was kind of the perfect introduction setup for the story. The Two Towers was that awesome middle, just great battle scene, a lot of action. And then the Return of the King was kind of that climax of tons of action, but it then wraps the story up really well. And all of the side stories that are going on kind of intertwine and come together to kind of just finish it out.
Literally the best part when he's just you bow to no man, and oh my god, dude, tears every time.
I know,
it's
and
just so
everybody
good.
up on Minas Tirith bows down, and the hobbits are the only ones standing. It's unreal, man.
Yeah, it kind of symbolizes the entire movie.
It does.
That it doesn't matter how big you are, you can change the world, kind of a thing.
Hey, there you go. That's powerful. I love it, man. I mean, we could probably talk about the lore and sit here and talk about, behind the scenes stuff and the books and things for a long, long time. But for the sake of this podcast and this episode, I mean, this franchise is a masterclass in almost every way. It's, to me, and I know I say this a million times, I love the use of practical effects. I love it. If you had to say, if you had to define Lord of the Rings, I mean, other than maybe just saying it's iconic, what comes to mind when you think of Lord of the Rings?
To just epicness, the
it's
scale. The scale of this movie is phenomenal, and that they even went about to not just to make them, but to make them back to back. I mean, Peter Jackson's absolutely going to go down in history for this.
He already has. He's already there. He's already cemented there, man. It's I got a tattoo of him on my left ass cheek the second I saw the Two Towers.
You did too?
Dude.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did too.
Yours was on your right, though, right? Kind of like a friendship
it's kind of
bracelet
on the
thing.
hip area, but
right. When you can see it on our OnlyFans when we pose back to back. We kind of come together and we try to do some.
And I actually got the Elvish script from The Ring tattooed around my asshole. So.
Oh my God! It lights up
when he's
really in the mood. It lights up. You know what I mean?
Or after Chipotle, you know.
Yeah,
it's
or,
a-
or after Chipotle. Jesus Christ.
but no, he,
Woo! Critic and the Common Man, baby. This is why you watch it right here. This is
yeah,
why you watch it.
he is absolutely going to go down in history for that. And the way that he filmed the movies and everything, they already feel like classics.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, not to make you feel old or make me feel old, but dude, these movies have been out for damn near 20 years, man. Fellowship of the Ring has been out for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh my
Dude.
God.
I remember watching it too. Holy shit.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, we're getting old. Jesus, we are getting old. But let's talk about scoring. It's probably no surprise where these movies come in and where we're gonna kind of come in with these movies. But
Yeah.
let's start with the Fellowship of the Ring. So obviously we always go up against Rotten Tomatoes here, and Rotten Tomatoes didn't disappoint. Fellowship of the Ring, critics gave it a 91%, audience gave it a 95%. Where are your scores at in comparison to that?
I give it a 9. It does a great job of building the world and creating the story and the exposition that we need, and making us want to see what comes next and feeling the rest of the like. It just does a good job of sculpting the world for us and putting us in it and getting us ready for what's to come, which is the two major battles and like the war for the ring. 9 out of 10, man. It's very well done, and even with little to no battle sequences in it, it does a good job of creating tension and you know, with Boromir's death and Gandalf's death, there's a lot of emotional impact that the movie leaves.
Agreed.
Yeah, and especially at the end with like Sam and Frodo like on the boat and he almost drowns and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, agreed. I'm right there with you. It's a 9 out of 10, which, no surprise, is going to be my lowest score for all three of these movies. So that says something, that a fucking 9 out of 10 is the lowest score. But it's no surprise. 9 out of 10 here too. It's my least favorite because I feel like the characters hadn't quite settled in. It's the most theatrical and it's the most over the top. And then it doesn't have that kind of war sequence that the other two have. Like the Fellowship of the Ring gets a little slow for me at times, whereas the other two, the Two Towers can get a little slow, but there's enough mixed in there to where I don't feel like it's too slow. Two Towers for me, I'll go ahead and tell you, this is another one of the few movies. This, Jurassic Park, I don't know what else, but this is one of the only other movies I think I would honestly give a 10 out of 10 for me.
Hell yes. I 100% agree.
Yeah, and Rotten Tomatoes 95s across the board, audience and critics. So I mean, for Rotten Tomatoes standards, that's just 5% or some kids trolling online. I mean, that's basically a 10 out of 10 too. So
I give Two Towers a 10 out of 10, dude.
Agreed.
It's a phenomenal movie in every possible way, from the visuals to the writing. It's just great. It really is.
I can't think of any substantial negatives for that movie. I can't. And especially if you're somebody who likes fantasy, you're into that, and you can kind of let yourself go and go into that world. There's nothing there to dislike. Nothing. Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10. And then The Return of the King, huge movie. I think The Return of the King was like one of the highest awarded films ever, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think it was. I mean, this thing won award after award after award.
All three of them did.
Yeah,
every year,
yeah.
dude. They all swept the Academy Awards every single year.
Fair enough, rightfully so. Return of the King actually a little lower, not a lot, but 93% critic, but an 86% audience. Kind of weird to see the audience score drop into the 80s.
I think for the most people, it was like that. It had too many endings, kind of a thing. It was just slower.
Yeah.
I give it a 9.5. I don't think that it's the best of the three. I think it's still a phenomenal movie, and I think it does a good job of wrapping up a massive story.
Yeah.
That I think could have been wrapped up a little quicker, but you know, Peter Jackson wanted to tell the story and he wanted it his way, and he wanted to make sure that every character got its end, and I think he did a good job.
Yeah, I'm with you. 9.5 out of 10. I'm right there with you. It's damn close to being a perfect movie. I just think the battle was the tiniest bit underwhelming. Not that I don't like watching it. It is very intense, but it lacks something that the Two Towers did. It just lacks something that the Battle for Helm's Deep did. 9.5 out of 10 for me too. And that's it, man. I mean, it's just, you could talk about this for days. There was so much that went into these movies. And as you clearly know, there's a lot more that meets the eye with these movies too, when you start getting into these books and some of the serious lore behind the scenes.
You know, Danny,
I love it, dude.
I never thought I would die filming a podcast side by side with a Daniel.
With a white man.
with a white man.
How about side by side with a friend?
I
I
could do that.
I
Would
do
you like
love
me to get
also,
you a box?
I will say a testament to the writers, the dialects and like the language is always really cool. Like I've seen some funny things that are like, I'm not gonna speak like I normally do anymore. I want to talk like Aragorn now, and it's like instead of telling your friends to come with you, say I bid you stand, and like there's all these funny like quotes and
Yeah.
stuff from that. It's iconic,
of the
man.
West.
It's iconic. It's such a fun franchise to watch. It's such a fun
Yeah.
franchise to talk about. You know, we really appreciate it. Look, I know this is a long video, these franchise episodes, but we love doing them. If you guys are still with us, drop a thumbs up down below and get engaged in the comment section. We respond. We see all the comments, even the sex ads that love us. They like to post below asking for Chris.
A few of those are actually very useful. I've clicked on a couple.
There you go. You're very popular with the
Yeah.
with the Asian sex ads on our
Yeah.
YouTube. So, you know,
The,
you guys
the,
can
the
be,
websites seem mostly safe.
just don't put in your information. I've been getting some weird calls
Yeah.
lately, but
Yeah.
other than that, it's all been
I
good.
did
But
see a
love
couple
it, man.
charges to my credit card. I don't really.
A couple real big charges that
Yeah.
coming from overseas. I don't know. What do you think, Chris? You got anything else for the Lord of the Rings?
No, man. There's. I mean, yes, yes, of
Yeah.
course. I could sit here and talk for hours about it, but yeah. If you did, and if I know there are people out there that have never seen them, just fucking watch them because
Yeah, seriously.
it is a cultural. Like you have to watch them in order to like you have to watch Casablanca, you have to watch Lord of the Rings. There are movies that if you want to say that you've seen all the good movies in the world, you need to watch this, man. It's
right.
They are
The
worth
entire franchise. And, dude, this was one that you can literally start on a Saturday morning or something, and you'll be so invested in it mentally that all of a sudden you'll be done. Like later that afternoon, you're like, well, I just watched 9 hours worth of movies, and I don't even feel like I did it. So
I haven't even showered.
This is a movie marathonable movie franchise for sure.
Movie marathonable.
Movie marathonable. But that's it, man. I mean, other than that, I don't know. I think we should go out of here, maybe grab some food because we ain't had nothing but macaroni bread for 3 stinking days.
That was a good segue. That's
right,
That's
baby.
very good. You know.
That's right. All right, guys, we really appreciate it. If you want to leave a thumbs up, if this is your first time watching us and you made it through like whatever this is going to be, an hour and 45-minute long video, we love you. We're glad that you're here with us. We put out content every week. If you want to drop a subscribe, we really appreciate it. We're having a ton of fun. But that's it, man. Critic and the Common Man, that was our franchise episode of The Lord of the Rings. Follow us on Instagram for more content and see what we're coming out with. Chris, I bid you stand. Let's get out of here, man. See you guys.
That's all I got. Yeah.